Hey everyone, it's Leanne. Welcome to another video on my YouTube channel. Today I'm very excited to share this card with you guys. This is created using the Frosty Fairy stamp set from Lawn Fawn, and this is new for the holiday 2016 season. So to begin this card, I started with a top folded card base that is A2 card size. That's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I cut out a piece of cardstock of the same size, and this is what my artwork will be built on. I'm using the Frosty Fairy stamp set seen here. And I'm also using the Merry Messages stamp set from Lawn Fawn, and this is new for this season as well. This is what the dies look like, the coordinating dies for the Fairy Friends. I'm using the Ocean Wave Borders dies as well, and these will be for the snow peaks that I create for the background scene. And I'm also using this Snow Cool stamp set, which is also new this season. I'm going to use the snow stamp for the background. So to begin, I'm layering the two pieces of cardstock that I want to cut out with that ocean wave border to create the snow in the background. And I want to have two layers, so two depths into my scene. I put the die down with Post-it tape and ran it through my Sizzix BigShot machine. And so here I'm just creating the second layer, finding the position of how high I want the back of the snow to be, and doing the exact same thing, running it through my Sizzix BigShot machine. And I have those two snow layers for the background. For the distress inks, I'm going to use Tumbled Glass and Cracked Pistachio. And I like these two colors because they're very light, and I thought that they would be a nice complement to the winter scene. And so I'm going to use those for the tops of the snow and for the sky background. And so I'm starting with the Cracked Pistachio and just running that in circles, softly blending it into the cardstock. And I'm working from the top of the paper down to the bottom. The Tumbled Glass is lighter, and so I want that to be at the base of my horizon line. And so that will go on second. And when I blend these together, I overlap them a little bit, just so that there's a seamless color transition between the two colors. So you can see the background there and how that's turned out. And so now, just to emphasize the snow a little bit so you can see the tops of it, I'm going to use that Tumbled Glass and just very lightly rubbing it across the tops of the little snow peaks. And so when this is done and they're layered together, it won't just be white on white. You will see the transition and the difference between the two layers there. You can see that there. And so now I'm going to use Versamark ink, and I'm going to use the snow from the Snow Cool stamp set, the background snow. And so for my card base, because I use distress inks, they take a long time to dry, so I did blast that with my heat gun a little bit, just to make sure that all the ink was dried into the cardstock. And I'm going to tape this down before I stamp it. Versamark ink is really sticky. It's a clear ink so that you can emboss with it, but it is very sticky, so I put a little bit of tape to hold it on my desk so my artwork didn't move. And so I'm just stamping across the background there. The stamp wasn't quite long enough to reach, so I had to do two layers. Coming in with some glitter embossing powder. You could pretty much use anything. I will give some links in the description below of some supplies that you can use. This is something I've had on hand probably 10 or 12 years. So I'm just tapping on some of the glitter, and I also heat set that with my heat gun. So now it's time to stamp and color the fairies. This is the funnest part of this card. I was so excited to get to this point because ever since I got this stamp set, I got it in August in the pre-order, and I've known all along how I wanted to color these, but I wanted to wait for this season to arrive. I didn't want to rush the season, so now that Halloween's over, it's time to do the fairies. So I was really excited to get to this point of coloring. So I'm stamping out all the elements here that I want to use in my scene, and I'm using Memento Tuxedo Black ink. Because I will be using COPIC markers to color, and they are an alcohol-based marker, the Tuxedo Black ink from Memento is really good to work with that medium. It won't run or bleed. It'll keep nice and keep those crisp lines. So I'm just going to speed up the image here so you guys can see all of the coloring that I do, particularly for the house and for the wood. And so for this technique of the wood, I wanted it to really have a gradiated look to it and really pop. And I found that the technique that I colored with that worked best is sort of like how when you color fairy hair, or just any hair in particular, doing light wisps and building up the color from a light background and then using a medium tone and then coming in with a dark shadow color. So as I work through this, you'll start to see how that wood color builds up and really gets dimension. And so I'm coming in here with E23, which is my darkest color, and just emphasizing the shadows, thinking about where the wood pieces are in shadow to each other and which ones are in the foreground, which ones are in the background, and where that shadow would lie, if it would be on the left side of the line or the right side, and just making those considerations. And for this drawing here, you can make those decisions too. Depending on where you put your shadow, that's what becomes part of the background versus the foreground, and you have the liberty to make those decisions. So just kind of deciding where I want those shadows to be and adding in those darker colors. And I've also tried to use a small amount of COPIC colors as well. This way you don't need a zillion colors to create this picture, and if you have a similar brown color on hand, you could use that as well. It doesn't have to be the exact same brown, but I do try to stretch the colors as best as I can. They are expensive markers, so it's nice when you can make them go a long way in a scene. And the best thing about that too is when you use the same color group of markers, then everything sort of ties together visually because you're not introducing a lot of random colors. And so it helps with the composition in the scene overall. So for these blue colors, I did use them in the window, and I decided to bring them into the little steam pipe on top of the house too. Now they're not, typically you'd want to color a steam pipe silver, but I wanted to, again, keep those colors in a small color group and keep it harmonious. So, and it's fun, they're fairies, so, you know, they can break the rules a little bit. So I did use the blue on them. Now here I'm coloring the blonde hair on my fairies, and this is using the same technique as used on the house in the wood grain. So just light wisps of lines. And so I start with the lightest color and I kind of work out where I want the lines to be, where the highlights should be, and leaving a little bit of white on my paper. And then coming in with the second color, the medium yellow, and building up those lines and kind of creating a little bit more definition with the hair. And then by the time I get to the third color, the darkest color, those are the fine lines and wisps that really create that dimension. And so as I go through, you can start to see how those shadows build up and the head starts to look more round because the shadows are placed as they are. Now for the skin tone, I'm using the skin tone pack of COPIC markers. They come with, I think, 5 or 6 colors, and I'll link that as well below. And so I really like this marker set because it gives a nice gradiated range and it's easy to make nice skin tones. Now the exciting part about these fairies, the minute I seen them, I saw them in red velvet with white fur muffs and earmuffs and trim. I guess it's a very classic look, and as soon as I seen them dressed like this, I was immediately drawn to making them in red velvet, and I thought they would look so cute like that. And it's a Christmas color too, so it all kind of blends together. And now again, reusing that same blue that I used in the house, I am adding this to the wings, and that will help tie all those colors together and tie the scene together. And then just giving them little red headbands here too. Now I went back with the R20 and added little cheeks. And then the E23 I used to create their little booties. So now with the BG13 and the BG18, I wanted to bring in some of the background color, those 2 distress ink colors that I used. I wanted to disperse them in the foreground as well. So I decided to put those as the berries on the tree. You could also make these berries red. I think they would be really pretty in red. But I decided to do the teal base colors. And then the mushrooms too. These were super fun to color. I love these little mushrooms. And so I thought they were a nice complement to do the red as well. And so a little design tip that I can give you guys is if you're using a strong color like red and it's on a background that's light and isn't as strong visually, it's better to have a little bit of that color dispersed throughout your scene, not just one element of red, because it becomes a strong focal point and then you miss the rest of the picture. So by making the door on the house red and by making these mushrooms red, they're tiny elements, but they help balance the color, but they still keep that red as a strong focal point with the fairies wearing it as their dress. So here I'm just coloring the Christmas lights and adding the shadows. And so here is what it looks like when I have these all on my cutting plate to go through my Sizzix machine. I just wanted to show you guys what this looks like because I don't always show this in my process videos. But I tape them all down and put them on the plate, and then I just run them through the Sizzix machine. When they come out, they're easy to pop out of the dies. And so here I'm going to use this bottom sentiment for the front of the card from the Merry Messages stamp set. And because it's a new stamp, I've stamped it a couple times on a scrap piece of paper. I find it just breaks in the stamp, and then by the third or fourth stamp you get a nice clean impression. So now that I have that stamped on, and I use Memento Tuxedo Black ink for that as well, just because it was on hand, it was handy. I'm putting down the snow layers. So my first snow layer was a little bit big, it overhung on each side, so I brought that to my cutting mat, flipped it over, and lined it up with my metal ruler to the edge of my cardstock, and just trimmed that so I had a perfect flush edge. And then just adding the bottom layer of my snow, and I'm putting these both on with foam tape. I really want to create some dimension with my scene here. And then with the house too, the house is going to sit between two layers of snow. So on the top part of the house, I'm going to put the foam tape so it sits at the same level on the card. And then on the bottom part of the house, I put a little bit of my tape roller because it will be at the same level as that background layer of snow. So I'm going to put a little craft glue on a piece of scrap paper. And this is just to attach the tiny elements. These are a little tricky to use my tape roller with. And so I just put some white craft glue and positioning those by holding them on the end of my X-Acto knife, just getting them into place, and they dry pretty quickly. This is a nice glue actually to work with. So now I'm coming in with a micron pen, and where the white silhouette, the halo of the Christmas lights is, I'm just coloring the edge so that it looks like they're behind the peak of the house. So just coloring along that black line. And then once I have that all colored, I'm just coloring little black stems to have the lights attached to the top of the peak. So it looks like they're hanging down on little cords. Now here I'm putting the tree together, and I put I used my tape roller on the back of this, and for any overhang I just used my finger and rolled it around to the back of the edge. And the tape roller is really flexible. It's easy to sort of manipulate, and I actually prefer using the tape roller. It's really easy to use, but if you do have overhang, you can just roll your finger around and push it to the back, and it's super easy and quick to do. So now I'm going to put my fairies on the card scene, and I'm adding foam tape to them as well so they have a little pop. And for the fairy wand, I want the fairy to look like she's holding it in her hand, and so I've cut the bottom off so it cuts off the white part of the edging. And then I put a little foam tape on the wand as well. And then once I have that in place, I'm doing the same thing I did with the Christmas lights. I'm just coloring the bottom of the wand where the paper's white from the cut so that it looks like it is coming out of the fairy's hand. So it looks like one continuous image. And so I have my little fairy down below as well beside the sentiment. And I'm just coming in with a white gel roll pen and adding some highlights. Adding them to the little balls on the tree and the lights, adding them to the mushroom caps. And I also used a Wink of Stella brush pen in clear glitter and put that on the fairy wings as well. It didn't get recorded in the video, unfortunately, but I will link that below as well. So now I'm ready to attach my artwork to my card base, and I use my tape roller to put tape on that, and then lining them up on the folded edge using the sides of my hand, just pushing them together, and it's all in place. So there you have it. This is my Frosty Fairies holiday greeting card. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you're notified the next time I post a video. Thanks so much for watching.